Hello, good evening, Tracy. We are back again with Straight Talk with our council candidate. Today we have a special guest, William Musenberg, with us, and Raj is my co-host. We have already met two of our council candidates, veteran Jamie Medina and Army officer, as well as our planning commissioner, Cliff Hudson. Today we have the opportunity to meet our third candidate. As we all know, so how important is it to have a good leadership which can steer us through the crisis moments? We are facing COVID. This week is very hot, and we are facing the fires around us. So to keep us safe, we need a good leadership. Raj.
Thank you, Gritesh. And it's incredible to see how many great candidates are running for our Tracy City Council race. And we already have two great people on our show. And today we have the third candidate with us, William Mutzenberg. And William Mutzenberg, he is a little bit telling about himself, about his background, educational background. He's a UCLA graduate. He has his bachelor's degree in political science and government, and currently he's working as a legislative assistant in Sacramento, where he's bringing tons of and heavy policymaking experience, which I think it's very important for any public office and would be an incredible, vital asset for any public office to have that sort of experience. So that's incredible. So let's all hear from William directly, who William is and what he has to offer to Tracy. William, floor is yours. Welcome. We're honored to have you on our show.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate being on here. And good evening, Tracy. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you, all of you as well. So as Raj said, I'm a graduate of UCLA. So to any Bruins out there, go Bruins. And I really wanted to enter this race because Tracy's is my hometown. I have lived here since 2004. And, over the last almost 20 years, I've seen this town grow in so many great ways. And I see a lot of room for improvement, especially as we continue to grow with this exodus from the Bay Area. And so, my family is a transplant. We moved out here from Union City. And so I have that experience of, having that Bay Area life, but also coming out here as well. And I've come to love living in Tracy. I graduated from Kimball High School in 2014. So I have loved Tracy since then and have always wanted to find a way to make or provide my own opportunities to help our city grow. So I really appreciate this opportunity and excited to talk to both of you tonight about my vision for the future of our town.
That's awesome, William. And like I said, it's so great to see the amount of energy, the amount of experience that all the candidates are carrying. So today we would actually like to hear from you. If you get elected for this office, what would be your vision? Where do you see this town going? What kind of direction would be seeing from you?
Yeah, definitely. I think the most pressing issue, though, is figuring out how are we going to come out of the COVID-19 crisis. And I think tackling it from a healthcare perspective and an economic recovery perspective is going to be really crucial. Tracy is almost approaching 100,000 people, and we still only have one ER medical hospital in the city. And we have parts of the city that are growing, like the south part with Ellis and the Tracy Hills, and that area lacks a robust medical facility to meet those needs, especially for the Tracy Hills, considering Coral Hollow, I believe, isn't ready to meet the demands and peak of all the things that we have going on in the city. And after reviewing the general plan, I think that's really crucial is as we look at what our economic development is going to look like, is are we going to have the transportation infrastructure? Are we going to have the housing policy and priorities in place to address the growing needs of our city? And so my vision is to make sure that we tackle the immediate need of COVID through the healthcare lens and the economic recovery. And that means drawing on grants that are offered by the state and federal governments to make sure that our businesses are propped up, our workers have a payroll that they can rely on to pay for their utility bills. Hopefully we can work with private industries such as banks to see if we can leverage any forbearance for our community. And then on a long-term strategy is, people are going to be moving out here from the Bay Area now that we are seeing what the work from home experiment is looking like, and it's proving to be a pretty good success. And so a lot of people aren't going to see a need to live out in the Bay Area anymore or other parts of the state, and they may come to Tracy. And so what is the housing going to look like? Are we going to prioritize mixed-use housing or townhouses that are going to be, for young professionals that may not have families or families that are just starting out? A lot of families probably don't need a 4-bedroom house just yet, but that's kind of what we're building at the moment. And so I would like us to see our city diversify its housing stock, and especially if we're going to build out around transportation, and that includes the Valley Link in downtown, the upgraded ACE services, and making sure that those transportation viaducts are accessible through multimodal transportation opportunities such as biking, pedestrian walkways, or through cars. And then also making sure that those areas around it too have the livelihood or leisure activities that our residents are going to need, or to attract visitors from out of our town. And so I think by having a short-term and a long-term goal is going to be really key to making our city attractive to residents, so that we're not just a first thought coming out of the Bay Area, but we're an actual destination that people want to come live at. And so that's my dream and vision, is to make sure that Tracy is an economic leader in the Central Valley, and that we are competitive, but also showing all the great things that we have to offer in our city. And so that's kind of like my vision, and I'm really excited to share more in depth about that with the both of you and the rest of the city.
Yeah, thank you very much, William. So the key points or the key issues you are facing or just thinking of working on is our housing, transportation, and the economic recovery due to the COVID, as well as, we need to have a plan for economic recovery. So for the housing, William, if we talk about it, so 84% of the residents that Tracy has, they have to commute out of the Tracy for affordability. Mm-hmm. And 78% of the work that Tracy has, people are coming from across the cities like Stockton, Manteca, Modesto. So there's a huge affordability gap. So 30% of a household income, so that is being spent towards their housing, and a median salary, I would say 108K is needed for a family to support or sustain a house in this town. So how would you see that affordability gap? As one point you did touch that we are missing the middle houses, like the townhouses, duplexes, and all those things. So what is your plan, or what is your thought? So how you can just mitigate that gap so that the people living in Tracy, they can afford the houses?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and it's what we in Sacramento, because I work with affordable housing partners to help bring policy at the state level. We call it the missing middle, and so I think that's something that you hit on very well. Is like there is a missing middle here in Tracy, and that you need the 108,000, the 6-figure income to afford a good house here in Tracy. And so I think the first thing that we need to start looking at is what are the city zonings, because zoning is the biggest barrier. A lot of people in Tracy probably want to downsize or possibly split up their homes into a duplex or a triplex so that they can also get some extra income to help supplement them as they enter retirement age, for example. And so we want to make sure that residents have that flexibility depending on where they live. And so I would like us to see, to work with residents to see if we can introduce along certain corridors, such as through streets, so not courts, but through streets, if we can upzone those areas for duplexes and allow incentives for people to add duplexes or convert their backyards into ADUs, so that we can have that rental opportunities for young professionals who may want an affordable housing living situation and are trying to save up to buy their own house someday. So that's the first thing I would look at. The second thing is we know that the city council passed the TOD, or the Transit Oriented Development Plan, and they were putting that on the ballot as Measure Y this year to amend the Tracy Growth Ordinance so that the downtown area is not going to be subject to the limitations that are currently placed on the city. And so hopefully with that, we'll see mixed-use apartments, townhouses, or more dense construction within the downtown area, and I would like to see that expanded in other parts of the city as well, to make sure that we have the housing production that we need to house all of the residents who want to live in Tracy. And I think another thing too is, what are the types of apartments that we want to bring into Tracy? Do we want the traditional or the more suburban style apartments that we see where it's behind a fence or a gate and there's parking, or do we want to see more apartments that provide that walkability or transit access? And so I think thinking about what is the future of our housing going to look like is also going to be very key. And so I want to make sure that we talk to the residents and see what kind of housing do we want to build in our city. Do we want to continue building these large 90s style, as I like to call them, suburban houses, or do we want to mix it up in style as well, or provide opportunities for our residents to convert their homes to downsize and provide the additional units on those parcels? And so that's the experience that I would be bringing from Sacramento, is that I am very keen of what's going on at the state level and aware of how that can have an impact on our local city. And so I want to make sure that we talk to all the necessary stakeholders to make sure that our city addresses this housing.
William, I think you touched really, really great points in your conversation on the housing affordability, right? So, because the only focus is just not on the housing affordability, how you can attract more people to come and live in this town and call it this is their hometown. And on top of that, you talked about the young professionals. I consider myself a young professional still. And in order to buy a house, you actually need to save up. You can't just come here and if it's like a $700,000, $800,000 house, it's hard for anybody to buy it because it requires you at least six figures, $100,000 plus income in order to be comfortably living in that. And on top of that, you're probably commuting to Bay Area with this COVID situation. A lot of people can get to work from home. Maybe in the future that would be a next normal, and that's where some companies are going. And we need to have these discussions and conversations strategically in place because we don't know 5 years or 6 years down the road what is more coming and how we're going to handle that. And along with that, I don't want to miss a really great point you started off with about the hospitals. Our town is over 100,000 people, and we only have one major emergency hospital by Sutter. But there's no other. Either it's in Stockton, or there's one in Manteca, or you have to go 45 minutes out to Modesto. I don't know this very much out of my knowledge, so just out of curiosity, personally asking, what are the requirements to have another emergency hospital to be open in a town? Is there any population sort of a regulation requirements? Do you have any information on that?
Yeah, that's something that I have begun researching, is what are the needs for an additional ER hospital for the city. And I think based on just brief talks that I've had with some of the nurses in Tracy, is that it's going to be based on definitely on population, but then also what are the ratios of patients that are going to need those hospitals as well, and so, or hospital beds as well. And so I think that's going to be really key, is looking at what are the requirements to bringing that in. I am aware that 10 years ago there were talks with Sutter Health about building a complex across from Kimball, and those plans have kind of fallen through. As you can see across the street from Kimball, the roads have still not been paved out all the way. And so how can we restart those talks with Sutter to, if they're planning on bringing a hospital here, or we're planning on it, how can we make Tracy an attractive city to build that facility? And how can we incorporate the medical hospital with the opportunities that we have in terms of a nursing pipeline or a doctorate pipeline, to make sure that students that graduate from our high schools here in Tracy end up in those hospitals, or how do we attract people from other parts of the state to come work at our hospitals as well? And so I have some connections with folks in the medical field, and would love to continue those discussions with them in order to see the viability of expanding Tracy's medical footprint to serve our residents.
So thank you very much, William, for bringing that up. Yes, across Kimball, there is the property that Sutter owns, and there are talks, and I'm not sure where it is, as you explained, like Mountain House is there, Tracy is here, the Tracy Hills is being coming up. So the population-wise city is increasing, and if somebody has something or they have some issues, they have to wait longer and longer time because we do not have that facility, and it's life and death situation. Thank you very much for bringing that up and working towards that. And for the transportation aspect, you mentioned briefly about the general plan. So, what do you think where we are, like day-to-day commuters, as Raj mentioned, most of us have to go across Altamont Pass. I already shared with you, 84% of the population from Tracy, they are commuting outside, and 78% of the population is coming into Tracy. So our freeways are jam-packed, our inner streets are jam-packed. So as per your research or your knowledge from the general plan, what do you think where we are heading, and what improvements or what direction you can lead us?
Yeah, so as a commuter myself, I know the struggle. I've sat in the Bay Area traffic 2 hours one way for the day, 2 hours back. I've commuted up to Sacramento. That's an hour and 30 minutes, and so I've seen what it's like, and it's stressful to just sit in your car for hours on end. And so that's why transportation for me is one of the biggest issues because right now, even though a lot of people are working from home, I was actually driving to the Bay Area yesterday, and I saw the freeway was backed up on 580. And so, for me, having expanding the opportunities for multimodal transit is going to be very key. And how are we going to make sure that people are going to use those transportation options once they come? Because I think that, and that again goes back to how are we going to plan the city around transit? Are we going to still be car oriented? Because while a lot of us love the freedom of our cars, cars take up a lot of space, and that encourages pedestrians or pedestrian access or wanting to use your bike because it creates these unnecessary distances between you and the final destination, which is a train station. And so that's why I'm really proud of the work that the city council has done, and would like to push that even further with the downtown zone, making sure that we have ample residents who are going to use that to commute to the Bay Area. In addition, I would love to see us expand the opportunities we have with the Tracer bus system to really encourage our citizens to use our public transportation within the city. Yesterday, I was watching City Council, and they were discussing the Tracer Plus option, which will provide kind of like a public transportation lift opportunity where residents can call 2 days in advance for a bus or a van to come pick them up and take them to their destination. So I think those are great opportunities to expand. What is the future of public transportation going to look like, and how can we make sure that our residents are incentivized to use that? And then second, I think we need someone who is really passionate about this issue. I have been talking about trains and building one for 10 years since high school. And so, and I actually helped Assemblymember Eggman back in 2017 when I was a fellow in her office to promote that in the legislature. And so we got Valley Link passed in 2017. So now it's all about funding and where are we going to get that funding? And I think that's going to be the really big push is how can we get funding not just from the state and the federal government, but how can we draw on county dollars, our local dollars, and private dollars to get this train up and going? Because 2028 is such a long time, and by that point, Tracy could have 120,000 people, or the other neighboring communities could also be growing. Modesto could easily surpass 250,000 people, the Modesto area. And that means more cars on our roads as well. And so I want to bring Valley Link to the area as fast as possible. And that means drawing on out of the box thinking on where are we going to get the funding? How are we going to make sure Union Pacific works with us to get that train up and running? Because I would love to see it sped up as much as we can to get people off the roads and into these light rail cars or heavy rail cars, however the Valley Link Rail Authority decides to purchase their rolling stock, to make sure that we get as many people quickly into the Bay Area or brought back from the Bay Area as much as we can. And so that's where I'm going to prioritize most. And I hope that by prioritizing that, we'll also bring in good paying jobs, steady jobs, and make sure that we have the upward mobility for our city and our residents.
That's great, right? I'm just trying to put up the words together to move forward on this. There's so much needs to be done. There's no doubt, there's no question in our town, and a lot of people. The reason we're seeing so much growth on the housing because people actually wanted to come and live here. If you're really looking at it, after the Livermore Altamont Pass, this is the first town that people wanted to be here and they can go back to work, and that is the plus point for us. I think if we're looking in the right directions to attract more people, more jobs, there's no doubt in coming 5 to 10 years, this would be the one of the hottest growing community, hottest growing town for sure. And that's where I wanted to see my town going in that direction. So that being said, I think we can kind of need to go into more to our show to summarize overall your projection, your vision. Gurteej, did you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
before that, yeah, I have a couple of points. As we have touched transportation, we have touched the hospitals, we have touched the housing. For the economic recovery, that's the third point you did mention. So, like a simple household, a family of four in Tracy, so their average income is around 90,000. Then low income is around, so in the public sector, it is around 72,000, and very low income is around 45,000. So if we talk about in Tracy in general, for the private sector, what they are paying to their employees, it is between 51,000 to 87,000. So none of these jobs at present, private sector as well as public sector, do not curtail to the criteria as the median of 108 thousand. So the yearly salary to afford a house. So and economically, due to these circumstances like COVID, so this will take every city as well as the Tracy city a couple of years behind. So can you elaborate on the economic recovery plan? What your thoughts are? How would you bring this city towards progress?
Yeah, so with economic recovery, again, I think it's really important to stress that there's the short-term needs and then the medium-term and long-term needs. And so with the short-term, we need to really make sure that we are drawing on those federal dollars that were provided in the CARES Act. I know that those expire at the end of the year, so I unfortunately may not be able to touch those dollars and help kind of siphon them at the city council level. But as an advocate, I want to make sure that the city, Tracy, knows that our city council is working to provide those funds for the direct COVID needs, and that includes making sure that our hospital staff are adequately provided their PPE, any aid there, but beyond that, is making sure that our businesses are receiving the grants that they get or the loans that they should be applying for, making sure that our city staff are providing those opportunities in a seamless way to those resources that are available. And then the city is also providing grants and loans as well. And so how can we draw on those or expand on those dollars and make sure that they go farther and longer? And I think you touched on a really important point, is that the median income for Tracy may be in the six figures, but for the employers that are in Tracy, it's a little different. And so I want to make sure that, again, it goes back to housing. What's the type of housing that we're building, but also how can we make sure that those income requirements are met for those who are working within Tracy? We want to make sure that people aren't commuting commuting from Stockton because they can't afford a home here in Tracy, but they work, say, in downtown at one of our businesses or in the mall or at our dealerships. How can we make sure that they can live and work so that they're not spending 20 to 40 minutes on their commute to come into Tracy, while the rest of us are also spending 2 hours on the road? And so I think, again, it goes back to drawing the types of people into Tracy. We have a lot of real estate out here that would be great for businesses to open up their own satellite offices. We're seeing with the COVID situation that a lot of people have the opportunity to work from home, but maybe having the smaller satellite offices for people who do want to don't want to work all the way from the Bay Area, but have the resources at hand to work here in Tracy. And then I think another thing too is we need to look at our IT infrastructure as well, and modeling the future of our city's growth to what are the needs of our residents. So if people are working from home, that's going to require a lot of bandwidth and making sure that our infrastructure can meet the capacity and demand. We're seeing our students are also drawing on that because of distance learning. And so making sure that as we go along, like, how are we going to invest in our infrastructure? What is that going to look like? So I've begun researching with my team the different public infrastructure projects that are going on across the country. One example is happening in Stockton, and so we're looking really closely at what's going on there and how can we draw on tech partners to invest in Tracy to make sure that our infrastructure is robust enough to bring IT jobs to our area, and also making sure that those IT companies, when they come to Tracy, or other companies that come to Tracy, that they're hiring from the residents that are here, because a lot of people want to work in Tracy, but the jobs just aren't here. So how can we make sure that when they come, they're hiring from Tracy and the surrounding community, so that we're investing in our region, making sure that our dollars are getting us farther and giving us the quality of life that we know that we deserve.
Absolutely, William. I think that is a very, very important point, and that's how it's supposed to be. Because when we talk about the jobs, it's just not only like, okay, we're gonna bring jobs overnight, but we really need infrastructure. We need this whole setup in here. We need to give some incentivize to the companies that why they need to move here, and this is what we're giving to them. And if you're looking at it, just our neighboring cities, Mountain House, Tracy, Manteca, Lathrop, I know probably dozens of families and dozens of people, they actually commute to Dublin, Livermore, San Jose side, to San Francisco for the jobs. And they would actually love to be in their town to spend their time with their family, with their kids. As you said, there are a lot of families that are moving here. They're just starting their families right now. And if they're spending 2 hours just going over the Altamont Pass and 2 hours coming back, the 4 hours out of their day is gone. And that 4 hours could have been being more productive for a company as well. And that is why we need people to look into this, how we can make a structure in a way where the companies and the employees both can be happy.
100%. And so that, I think, again goes back into how are we planning our city? And I think if we plan our city smart and strategically, and with the goal of building a greener city and bringing those amenities, people are going to educated professionals, working class people will find that the quality of life in Tracy is worthwhile, and companies will see that. They'll hop on the productivity that we're providing here in Tracy, and they'll move out here. But we need to invest in that infrastructure. That initial infrastructure is going to be the draw. I also believe that those are the types of incentives we need to really capitalize on, because at the same time we don't want to provide a blank check to companies to come out here, and they may not fulfill certain promises that we want to look for. And so I think first off, we need to invest in the city and our infrastructure. And then if we have the resources available, provide certain incentives. But I think that's more of the final negotiation straws rather than the initial bank that's going to bring people in. Because I think people want to invest in work in Tracy and bring those jobs out here to the Central Valley, where it's cheaper than the Bay Area. So it's making a city that's attractive for those companies who want to come out here, because at the end of the day, there's a reason why a lot of them still stay in the Bay Areas. There's that attractiveness to the Bay that we just need to really invest on it, pounce on as best as we can. And I hope to fight for that on the city council and making sure that our city is that attractive city at the end of the Altamont.
Yeah, thank you very much, William. Yes, the city should be attractive for their citizens. Once citizens see the value, like you said, the downtown Valley Link, they can have the tracer, they can enjoy their time with their families. Companies will definitely follow it, because now our city, Mountain House, Manteca, all these cities have that kind of educated people which can work here if those big companies or their small chains come to our city. So before we request you to share your wrap-up vision, so there's one question that is kind of live question I just got. So quarter of our population of our country, the homeless population, the quarter people are in California. So in Tracy, it is approximately more than 150 people who are homeless. So what are your thoughts about it and how you want to tackle this problem? The reason the viewers are having this thoughts, or everybody is having this, is because of this COVID. This situation is taking a toll psychologically. This situation is taking a toll economically. And health-wise as well as financially, people are getting distressed. And the other point, that is the hospitals. Yes, so that is another point. So people are not getting that help that they need at the right time. So those are taking a toll on the citizens of this city. So what is your approach on that?
Um, so if I understand the question, there's the homelessness aspect, and then do you want me to touch back again on the medical aspect as well, or tying it all together? I just want to make sure I address the question
So
in an appropriate way.
mainly it is the homelessness. So the medical aspect, that's what I was trying to say is, yeah, all those aspects are the triggering points that make people who owns the home just to take them to the other side of the fence. So, but
Mhm.
the city should have some plan. And as an candidate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so for me, homelessness starts with prevention. How can we prevent people from getting on the streets? Because as COVID is demonstrating, a lot of people are on unemployment currently because they lost their jobs, and unfortunately, a lot of those benefits are now taken away because the CARES Act funding has ended. So now people are scared that they're going to be kicked out on the street. There's worries about the eviction moratoriums that are going on at the state level, and so I think making sure that our city like finds a solution to how preventing homelessness where it starts, which is when people lose their home. Because once you lose your home, you lose that stability, and that can lead to a myriad of situations that many of us are never going to experience. But unfortunately, it has a tremendous impact on those who do experience homelessness. And so, for me, it's how can we prevent homelessness in the first place? Once people are homeless, how can we uh, tally our or type in our services in a way or triage our services so that people can get this help that they need to get back on their feet. I think a lot of people say like, oh, the homeless, they don't want our help. But after years of being homeless, for example, you're going to feel very dissuaded that anyone's going to come out. So why even bother? And so I think it's just making sure that as people become homeless, they know where the resources are available. And then third, I think another thing too is making sure that our city finds ways, creative solutions that are cost effective to house those experiencing homelessness and providing them services that'll help get them into owning their own homes someday. And we see these stories all the time that people pick their way up out of homelessness and they end up on these magazine covers. But it's unfortunately that's not going to be the case for many people. But I would love to see us tackle this as a humanitarian issue so that people don't feel like if you lose your job and you end up losing your home, you're not at the end of your luck. There's always an opportunity to come back and make yourself stronger. And so I believe in that offering those second opportunities and third opportunities and in a robust way, because I think it's not enough to just say, oh, we offered you a second chance and you blew it. It's making sure that when they have that second chance, it's a robust vision, there's a good protocol, and there's a security to it that people feel they have a trust in their government and they have a trust in the community that's providing services. And so I want to make sure that when we talk to our stakeholders and our community, that we recognize that even if someone is homeless, that doesn't mean they're less of a person. It just means they need just a little boost to get back on their feet and live the self-productive lives that they want to achieve for themselves.
You're absolutely right. I think you said it very nicely and exactly to the point. That's how it's supposed to be as a human beings and from out of the being taken care of as a humanity for everybody. That is how it's supposed to be, to help somebody to put them back on their feet so they can feel good about themselves and they can move forward in their life.
Exactly, and I think another thing too that a lot of people don't touch on is youth homelessness is a very important issue because unfortunately, people that are 16 and 17 when they end up homeless, they don't know where to go. I know when I was 16 and 17, I barely knew where I was going to go to college. So imagine being forced on the streets because of your situation, whatever it is. Now you don't have any resources to help. Society looks down on you. And you're not even a legal adult yet, and people are already turning their backs at you. So I think offering that opportunity and helping come to our youth is going to help curb lifelong homelessness and prevent people from entering or from becoming chronically homeless. And so I would love the city to look into ways to invest in a youth homeless shelter or youth services to make sure that our youth feel empowered and supported, especially during these times of COVID. We're seeing people experience depression, and other mental issues that might force them on the streets because, for example, if you're LGBTQ and you're living in a hostile environment, you could be out on the street. And so we want to make sure that those youth who are forced out aren't abandoned. And I think that's something that's really important to me.
Yeah, thank you very much, William. You touched all the key points that in day-to-day life the Tracy citizens are facing. So at the end, I would just request you to please summarize your aim for the city, what you will be bringing to the city, a takeaway for our citizens or for our voters.
Yeah, definitely. So I just want to say thank you, both Rob and Gertej, again for this opportunity, and thank you for the residents who are paying attention and listening in on these amazing conversations that they're having with the other city council candidates. And I just want to say that my vision for Tracy is building a city that focuses on community and helping one another. I think that's going to be very critical coming out of the COVID-19 situation, is making sure that we have a helping hand to each other and building out the infrastructure that we need to make our city thrive and attract more residents and attract businesses and attract visitors to ensure that we have the quality of life that we're all looking for. The American dream, I think, is about self-resiliency and a strong independence, but at the same time, understanding that we are all in this together. After all, one of our mottos is "E pluribus unum," out of many one. So for me, I hope to bring that vision to Tracy and inspire our city to rise up to become the leader that I know it can become. And so I appreciate this opportunity, and I hope the voters will resonate with my message and vote for me on November 3rd.
We appreciate your time and energy, William, as well, and helping us get educated as well on a lot of the topics that we're trying to learn as well. So we really appreciate on that part.
All right,
yeah,
thank you so much for the opportunity. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I just want to thank you, William. Thank you for touching very key points that we think in our day-to-day activities and try to juggle to find the solutions. So for our audience, if you will have follow-up questions, so we would encourage you to please share those questions with us. We'll forward it to William, or you can go to William's Facebook page or find him and ask follow-up questions. Make an informed decision. We are in a very tough time, as William already mentioned. Yes, we are in this together, and together we'll just pass this tough time. We are having COVID now. It's very hot outside with this fires across California. It is very tough time. We all are in it. We'll pass through it. With that, I'll just thank you, William, again, and thank you, Raj. We had a good conversation. And for voters, please follow up with the questions and make an informed decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.